Shut up and sit down.
Welcome to the Bricks King podcast, where I'm going to bend your ear about Lego, review those amazing bricks of plastic, and discuss what is new and up and coming around the Lego world. I'm your minifig host, Matt. Let's build on it. Welcome in, everybody. Episode 180. Just keep chugging along, just keep on going, right? Great stuff. This plastic brick stuff, man. How can you not get enough? Today, I am bringing you something that I guarantee you had no idea in your earthly, crazy, awesome mind was coming. And what I'm talking about is the design manager from Speed Champions, Christopher Stamp. Great interview with him. It was a blast to be able to chat and discuss all things Speed Champions, just kind of all over the place and just a lot of fun. So I'm not going to waste any time, because it's way too much information and Chris has so much insight. Anything that you thought of Speed Champions before, I guarantee you this changes your mind. Maybe you're not a car person, but I guarantee you the idea of the way these are built changes your mind 100%. Let's dive into it. So yeah, I'm excited to be here. I'm a giant Speed Champions freak. Especially after last year when you guys increased the design size to the 8 stud wide. I know there was a lot of unhappy communities out there, but I was like, yes, more detail, bigger cars. I was all right with it. So, all right, well, I'm going to get my big question out of the way first, because I've been dying to know. So
okay, now I'm scared.
You guys have created a bunch of different vehicles, and then this year, you do the top fuel dragster, which I talked to Tim from New Elementary about that, and he's like, he didn't really know much about it. So with that in mind, you guys have done a bunch of different things. I mean, like a McLaren or something like that is very well known. Is there something that you have a car desire, like a certain car that maybe you haven't done yet, that you are really hoping, you know what, I want to do this in the future, whether it's something the Lego's like, yeah, green lights or not, something that maybe you haven't done yet, you're like, God, I want to see that car?
I guess it depends what you define as a car, because instantly I would say, this is so not Speed Champions, if we could do Blade Runner, I would be so happy. Can you imagine that with all the working lights and everything? That'd be so cool.
That would be neat.
Oh, that's a very interesting question. To be honest, it's really hard to say, because there's so many cars that we do. Because I see a lot of these cars in person. I'm in quite a fortunate position. I'm quite lucky that I don't see every car in person, but there's some. For example, we work very closely with McLaren. I've got a lot of friends at McLaren. So I've seen the McLaren Elva up close, and I've seen the Senna in person, and seeing those cars, it's hard to say, oh, I want that when I've seen these cars, or when I've seen the LaFerrari, for example, or a McLaren P1, or a Porsche 918. Porsche 918 probably is one of my favorite cars I've ever seen. Ford GT, the new Ford GT, or even a GT40. Seeing those cars and looking at the shaping on them, they're so beautiful. They're so different to what you see in the supermarket car park, or what you see when you're driving home. It's hard not to appreciate them, to be completely honest. So I feel I feel blessed with what I have seen and what I have done, that it's hard to say, oh, these are okay, but I really want that one. If you know what I mean?
Yeah, absolutely.
I think, yeah. It's hard to pinpoint one in particular, unless I went crazy, like I say, with something like
Blade Runner,
like Blade Runner or Back to the Future or something like crazy like that.
Yeah, you wouldn't have any complaints from Back to the Future people. I know that.
No, I know, right?
Yeah. Well, so I was chatting with Jordan momentarily before I came in here, and he was saying it would be really cool if Speed Champions came out with a like a 1930s type Indy car, like old, like he said, he described it, a Twinkie with wheels. And I know what he was talking about. With that, now I don't know how that works as far as like IndyCar and.
No, I think definitely. To be honest, I would love to do something like that. My question would be the same as always: is can we do it justice? I think it ticks a lot of boxes. It's different silhouette. It's very different to anything we've done before. I think there's. I don't know how much kids would like it.
Mm-hmm.
Kids might think it's too old because what I've noticed is cars from the 80s or cars from the 60s or the 70s. So like when we've done the muscle cars, Challengers and Chargers and Corvettes and all those kind of things. Kids think those are old, where to me, an old car is something from like the 1920s.
Right.
So I think it really depends on who you're talking to is what is old and what isn't. But I would say never say never. That's definitely, especially the more different it is, then the more chance it's got to be a speed champion. Because if the more modern cars you get to, they tend to get quite similar. And that's okay if you're doing a die cast, because then you can get the details exact and you know exactly what it is. But for us, it's not just about the car, it's also about the building experience. And what we don't want is repetition. So when you get a lot of these modern cars being that, because of all the rules there is these days about aerodynamics and road safety and all that kind of stuff, a lot of the shaping can get very similar. Then obviously the build experience will be very similar. And that's something I would like to avoid if possible. So doing things like Formula E or doing things like the Top Fuel Dragster or doing the Ford Bronco, they're very different from a silhouette, from a build experience than the standard, I don't know, pick a car. And the Ferrari Tributo that we did last year. When you do the Ferrari Tributo, that is to some extent what people think in their mind is, oh, that's classic speed champions. But we don't want to be classic. We don't want to do a Tributo in every year in a different color type of thing. We want to do a Tributo this year, and then next year we want to do a like you said, a 1920s Indy race car or something like that. We really want to mix it up, because at the end of the day, the building experience is 50% of what's important to us. Yes, it's this car. Yes, it's how it looks, but it's also what you experience when you're building it. Oh, wow, they used a meat cleaver for a fin, or a mud skirt on a 6-wide, 5-wide Mini Cooper. They used an Exonite's axe for a headlight sideways, or on the new McLaren we just launched, we used a traditional axe from like the 90s or the 80s as a headlight sideways linked onto a tap kind of thing. Like we did the McLaren Senna, we used a cockpit upside down, not connected to anything, just locked in place because of the way it's a system. Like those are the things that we want to educate kids who's maybe getting older than Lego City, and they're maybe growing out of Lego City. They're used to everything being stacking and basic building. Sure. We want to say to them, look, you know Lego, but I want to teach you a thing or two about how you can be even more creative than you already are with Lego. But then to the other extent, we know that there's a huge audience out there of teens and adults and grown men who just want to buy a Speed Champions and have it on display on their office desk at work. We want those guys to pick up a Lego model and say, wow, I remember what it was like to play with as a kid. Oh, wow, look at these new tips and tricks and all this stuff. Or it's an AFOL who collects every modular building there's ever been because they love the quirky building techniques, that they pick up a Speed Champions and they're like, oh, wow, I see what they've done here. This is great. We want to target all of those people together. There isn't an age limit on being a car fan. So we want to appeal to anybody who's a car fan. It's not like, you can only be 9 years old to appreciate cars. And then when you get that 10-year-old birthday comes around, then you're now into bikes instead.
Right.
That would be crazy. So, yeah.
Well, I haven't had a chance to get my hands on the new wave for this year yet. Soon, hopefully soon. Now I know you kind of already mentioned this, but I'm curious why like a Bronco out of it just seems it's good. It looks cool, but why? Where did that come from? Like it just seems like it just seems different. I know last year you did.
Show you behind the curtain. Yeah. No, that's no problem. Basically, I just have a long list of names on the wall, and I get a set of darts, and I just throw it. I cover my eyes and I throw it, and whatever it lands on, I pick. No, obviously we wouldn't do that. It's a really complex approach. Basically, we really think it through every decision, and like we were just talking about with the 1920s IndyCar, different silhouettes. We look at different silhouettes. We look at not repeating ourselves, and we talked 2021. Because the Ford SKU came a little bit later for us. In 21 we have Chevrolet and we have Dodge, and then we thought, you know what would really be the icing on the cake would be to do a Ford SKU as well. Because when we're talking about American cars, those are the three main brands that having a lot of car friends, American car friends, they talk a lot about how, which I was surprised being European, you're either a Dodge guy or you're a Ford guy or you're a Chevy guy. And there's no, well, I'm a Ford guy, but I really like that Chevy. No, they're really divided.
Right.
So
right.
For us, it was really, okay, we really should do a Ford as well. And then we were talking to Ford about it, and we said, okay, what do you guys have? Like, what's your big story? What is your big focus this year? And they talked about the Bronco. They said that it's a big heritage for them, and they're revisiting it. And we looked at the Bronco in the past with Ford, but it never quite fit. Like the traditional Bronco never really fit in Speed Champions. And then when we saw the Bronco R, particularly being racing, not having a windshield. I know there's a few people online I've seen been like, oh, they forgot to put the glass in. Like the real vehicle has no glass. It's just a roll cage. All of those little things was very exciting. Having the tires stacked up on the back, we're like, oh, that's so cool. Like whether you're a fan or you're not a fan, kids are going to look at that and think, yeah, that could be in a Batman movie. It's so right. Outrageous. And also challenging ourselves, I worked on the Bronco, and my colleague, Søren Durhoin, did the Ford GT. Challenging ourselves, saying, you know what, how do we do a roll cage, and how do we support the roof on the roll cage, and how do we build all the different angles without it interfering with a minifigure? Because the minifigure is like the biggest constraint for us at our scale, and all those things really just ticked all the boxes we needed. And then we looked at the Ford GT, and for that we really said we'd been discussing when we evolved to the 8 wide. We've been discussing how we need to revisit some of our vehicles. There's some vehicles in there that are timeless, and they're either modern classics that's going to become timeless, or after 30 years people will look back on them, or they're classics from 40 years ago, and at some point we need to redo them. Like for example, a Porsche 911. A Porsche 911 in 100 years, people will still talk about a Porsche 911. So there's certain cars like that that's just going to be around forever. And what we said was, when we were talking about Ford, we were saying, okay, do we want to do another Mustang? Because we've done 4 or 5 of them at this stage. It might be a bit too soon. The car that jumps out at me is the Ford GT. It's known. Kids know it. Adults know it. It's cool enough. And with that car, we can really show those guys online who maybe think Speed Champions is only for fitting in their Lego city they've got built at home. Mm-hmm. We can show them, look, guys, City and Speed Champions is 2 different things, and this is the benefits of the 8 wide evolution. So that's why I really like showing the 6 wide GT and the 8 wide GT next to each other, because it's for us internally, it's night and day. They're 2 drastically different building experiences. And the 8 wide makes the 6 wide look very primitive. So that gave us an opportunity to revisit a previous car as well in a completely different way. And then adding the Gulf livery on top, we were just like, for us, it was just smiles all around the design team. So
let's take a quick break and come right back to Chris, because Chris is super awesome. Was that a McLaren-inspired deal with the Gulf livery, since they just ran it in Monaco on their Formula One car? Is that where the idea came from, since you have friends in McLaren?
No, I got friends in several. Like I've got a few in Ford as well. So it's nothing like we wouldn't do it that way, where McLaren gives us an idea and then we run with it with someone else. Gulf we've been looking at for years. Gulf we've been like, back in 2016 when we did the Porsche 917, the 917K, I actually personally worked on that one. I kept being like, I need it in golf. I need it in golf. And for one reason or another, we couldn't do it in golf. So every year I've been like, this year I got to get golf, somehow. And it just so happens that with this vehicle, we were talking about it with Ford, and I said to them, I said, guys, if we do the GT, please, can we get the golf livery? Like, I need this car and I need it in that livery. And everything just worked out. So for me, it was like tick, 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 tick. And then when we launch it, everyone will either like it or they'll hate it, or there'll be people saying they wish it was 6 wide so it fits in their city, or there'll be people saying that they wish there was less stickers. And we know these things already, but it's also, that is who Speed Champions are. So we'll offer you as much novelty as we can in newness and freshness, but we can't just start creating die-cast models.
Right.
It's perfectly accurate.
Yes, exactly. Well, the GT, it's such a beautiful car. I love that car.
I think, that, to be honest, out of the full assortment this year, it's hard to say. You can't pick favorites. And
you're right.
It depends on how you define favorites, because I think if we talk build experience, I'll lean towards like the Dragster or the Bronco. If you're talking accuracy, I think the GT is. I think what my colleague Søren Duhoin did with the GT was fantastic. I'm so proud of the work he did on that. And I mean, no one person does one model.
Right.
It's definitely, we're working on each car as a group, but Søren primarily drove that model, and the work he did was fantastic. So I think he really pulled it off.
So you mentioned about not having favorites. I'm kind of the same way. I know, like last year's wave, like they were all built, and I had them sitting out, and I would walk past one day and be like, I'd stop and look at it and be like, oh my God, the Formula E car, man, that is cool. And then it was, I can't remember what the green SUV was.
The Urus?
Yes. Yeah. And then one day it was like, man, that is so cool. So I get what you're saying, and I know you can't pick favorites. I couldn't give you a favorite either. So with all of that, how do you guys get such detail? I mean, it's super, super impressive how, and I know that's why the 8 stud wide was mentioned as to why it came about, but how do you guys manage to just capture all those tiny things? Like the Ford GT, like you said, there are things that are on that car that aren't on other cars. It's just a different look. So when you guys go through the build process of that, is that where the most challenge comes from? Like, you know what? I don't need a new element. Let me see what I can do with this, whatever. Yeah. Is that kind of what goes through your brains at that point?
I think to be honest, it's a really good question. And that's one of the things you'll see is it's kind of a question I wish more people asked us, because it is something we really struggle with internally. Like in the design team, we're very competitive. So we're challenging each other. But compared to, I've worked on many different projects at Lego. And one of the things that I can say about Speed Champions fans compared to any other project I've been on is you guys are so focused on the details. So focused on the details when it comes to Speed Champions. I've done Ninjago play sets. I worked on Ninjago City, where every detail was carefully thought out. And Ninjago City 2 I worked on as well. And Destiny's Bounty I did. Every detail is carefully thought out. And the fans look at it and they like it or they don't like it, and it's all based on opinion. Same with work I've done on Lego Movie and all these different things. When it comes to Speed Champions, if you don't get that shape exact, they'll complain. And the reason I think is because we're building people's dreams, because the majority of guys at some point have went through a car phase. At some point they've been a teenager with a car poster on their wall, or they've been a little boy and their first toy has been a Hot Wheels car or a Matchbox or something like that. And they've seen it in a movie, like we said, like Back to the Future DeLorean. How many people love that car, for example? And you know every detail on the thing, whether it's in Back to the Future 1, 2, or 3. You can tell just looking at the small detail changes which movie it's from.
Right.
And we are also fans ourselves, so we pride ourselves on, are we satisfied with it personally? And we look at these cars, and for example, the Toyota. I worked on the Toyota this year that's coming out, and straight away, and we tried everything to get the headlights, and straight away we ended up with the decorated 3 stickers to make a headlight. And we were like, oh my God, like that's, I hate it, but it's the best we could actually do.
Right.
And it bugs us. And I can go through every single vehicle we've done on Speed Champions, and there will be details on there where we're sat there going, yeah, it looks great, but that rear end, or but that headlight, or that cockpit shape, or something. Yeah. Every single vehicle. And that's why we aim to capture as much detail as possible, because we know that the guys who's collecting these and building these, they're so focused on the details. The details are so important that we need to get them right. And that's why we try to do as close as we can. And we really do try. We spend months building these things, trying to just re-loop them. And what you'll see is that also comes through the enthusiasm of the designers who come on the team. I know that, for example, me and Cern, who I mentioned, we're challenging each other. We're competing with each other constantly. And there's nothing better than not sitting at our desks, but sitting on the floor next to the piles of elements and saying, oh, we could. Then you make something small and you say, oh, what about this? And you're like, and you take it and you say, well, actually, and you tweak it a little bit and you make it better. And you're like, you become 2 8-year-olds, like, trying to see who can do the better McLaren rear end with the taillights and stuff like that. So we had with the dragster, I'm so proud of the dragster. A lot of people look at the dragster and they think it's just very basic stacking, or they look at the Challenger as well and they think, oh, it's very boxy, so it must be a very basic build. I think one of the best build experiences this year has been the dragster, or even the Challenger as well. If you look at how we built the headlights and the taillights. And the work that we had Sven, one of our colleagues, Sven Franek, working on, the level of detail and the passion that he brought to it was fantastic. So yeah, I think it definitely comes down to the enthusiasm we have on the team, that we're car fans ourselves, the knowledge we have that we know how critical you guys are and detail centric. But then also, we don't want to just make a new element for everything.
Sure.
Like, we are Lego. We've got elements that's been around for 80 years. We want to see how can we use that element in a brand new way that nobody's thought of, or how can we steal a technique that's been used in a modular building or on a Star Wars spaceship, and then say that we came up with it ourselves.
Well, we took your technique and we put it in this car, so we're cooler than you.
Yeah, well, we did it in Ferrari red and you guys did it in Star Wars gray. So, that means it's ours. So, but seriously, it's all about trying to do the most accurate car we can, because it would be very easy for us to just mold a headlight and say, okay, well, look, it's so accurate, but that's not us. Like that's more what you get from a diecast.
Sure.
What makes us Lego is the fact that it isn't 100%. It is always going to be a caricature. I mean, we're going to try and make it the best caricature you'll see, but it's always going to be that caricature. So yeah, I think it just takes time, and it's all about that enthusiasm. That's all I can say is getting enjoyment out of the challenge of trying to capture a detail, and getting to the extreme, getting super frustrated about not capturing a detail. Like, I've had so many late nights where I go home and I'll be sat watching the TV and my girlfriend will say, oh, what you thinking? And I'll be like, this Ferrari taillight, what if I use a Nexo Knights sword in a 35-degree angle? Like, you start coming up with all this crazy stuff. So
meanwhile, she's like, I need you to be here. I need you to be present. And you're like, I can't get it out of my brain. I need to solve this.
She's not thinking like, oh, I wish I'd never asked.
How cool was that? It's like a dream come true to be able to talk to somebody, not only just a Lego designer, but somebody so knowledgeable about cars in general. And I'm not a car dude. I'm not a car guy. Like, I love cars. I love speed. I love racing. I love that kind of stuff. But the idea of jumping into the brain of a Lego designer for this theme just blows things out of the water. It's just unbelievable. And you really get to realize what it's like to work at Lego as maybe just a small portion, but you really get an idea of what it is like to be on a team. I mean, he's talking about sitting on the floor like 2 8-year-olds, just, oh, hey, let's build this. Oh, look what I built. How can we fit this in there? How cool of a job would that be? I know there are their own stressors that come with it, just like any job, but being an AFOL, being a person that loves Lego, whether I'm an adult or I'm in a 8-year-old frame of mind, whatever, Lego is still Lego. And man, that is so cool. That's like the ultimate. So what you guys will have to do is you will have to stay tuned, because we're going to have Chris on in the future to discuss the entire new wave of Speed Champions that are out currently. So you guys can pick those up. You can pick them up at your big box stores, I guess, here in the US, but definitely at lego.com. You can check the link down in the show notes and follow that if you live in the US. If you live outside of the US, I'm sorry. I'm sorry. But with that said, I hope you guys enjoyed it. It was a blast to talk to Christopher, whatever you want to call him, cool car guy, speed champion guy, whatever. And hopefully it'll be just as much fun the next go round. So until next time, we've got other stuff that's coming up. We have more things to talk about. We have other designers. Unfortunately, some of those designers said, I don't want to use my voice. You use your voice and pretend you're me. So we're gonna change some things. So with that said, until next time, I'm your minifig host, Matt. Let's build on it.